I've helped over 50 e-commerce brands generate $10 million with email marketing. The first step to growing your email revenue is knowing where you're making mistakes. And if you don't know where you're leaving hundreds of thousands of dollars on the table, you're not going to know what necessary changes you need to make. That's why I spend about 40 hours each and every month auditing 6, 7, and 8-figure Klaviyo accounts across 15 different e-commerce niches. From there, we implement tailored fixes to their email account so we can start fast tracking their campaigns to 7 figures, 8 figures, or even more. In this video, I'm going to walk through exactly how we audit email accounts so you can analyze and optimize your own. Let's get into it. All right, so the first thing that needs to be looked at is always going to be the home tab. So we want to look at the total revenue, the attributed revenue, the breakdown between the campaigns and the flows, and any particular flows that are performing well. So I've gone and made some initial notes on this already. Obviously, I dived into the account just before starting this video to just make sure there was nothing drastically wrong and I wasn't breaking any NDAs. But these were my initial notes. So from looking at that account, we could see in the last 30 days, the account is hitting 21% of attributed revenue to Klaviyo, which is on the lower side of what is considered to be a healthy account. What I would do then is make sure that this 30-day period is not an outlier. So I would go and make a custom period for sort of the last 6 months to see what's been happening. As we can see, 22% as well over the last 6 months. So the account is also hitting 22% attributed revenue on average over the last 6 months. We can see that flows are going to be carrying the weight of this in this scenario. So they're bringing in 92% of their email revenue just from the flows and only 7% or 7.2% from their campaigns, which is extremely, extremely heavy on the flows front. So we want to make note of that. So from that, we can sort of derive that the campaigns are a weak spot. Either the flows are a really strong point or the campaigns are a really weak point. But since their attributed revenue is on the lower side, and that means they're missing out on revenue in their email account, if the flows are really strong, that means the majority of focus or the majority of room for improvement is going to be coming from the campaigns. So the account should be bringing in, like based on a good Klaviyo account, this number should be at least 30%, closer to 40% in a really strong account. Some really strong accounts even see over 40% of attributed revenue, sometimes 50%. That's a bit of an outlier. 50% would be an outlier, but that 22% is low, regardless of the way you look at it. So we know that the account should be bringing in 30 to 40% of its revenue from email. So just based off these numbers, in the last 30 days, they've brought in 40K from email, which is 21%. If we can get that to 30%, that's an extra $20,000 in revenue. If we can get it to 40%, that's double. So an extra $40,000 in revenue, sorry. So this is not a small amount of money we're talking about here. It's clear that there's a lot of money being left on the table. So from here, I'm going to do the audit completely live. I haven't looked at anything else. And the way I will split it up is we look at the pop-up form, we look at the flows, which we'll sort of go over briefly because they're already so strong and it's clearly not the area of improvement here. But then we'll look at their campaigns, which are obviously lacking, the segments they're using, and their deliverability. So these are going to be the 5 pillars that I base an audit off. So let's dive into their pop-up form straight away. So on the sign-up form front, we're looking at a form submit rate of 1.7%, which is not good. Klaviyo says it's good, but based off good benchmarks, we want to be shooting for at least 3%. I mean, 5% is good. Between 5 to 10% is what we should be shooting for. Over 10% is excellent and would be really nice, but obviously 1.7% too low. So we'll note that down. 1.7% opt-in on the pop-up form is way too low. We should be shooting to at least, I'll be a bit more formal here, we should be trying to at least double this opt-in rate. If not, get it to at least 5%. So because the pop-up form's only got a 1.7% opt-in rate and it should be about 3%, which is double, we're also leaving a ton of revenue on the table in our welcome flow. So even though the flows are really strong here, they could be stronger just by collecting more contacts. So we're missing out on sales in our flows, even though they're already strong, by not increasing opt-ins here. We could double the amount of people in our welcome flow by doubling the opt-in rate, which is correlated to doubling our welcome email revenue. Lots to improve upon here and lots of money on the table. So they're getting a lot of traffic. They're only capturing 1.5% of it. We should be capturing 3%. What I will do next is unpack the pop-up form that they're doing. But because of my access, as an analyst access, you can't actually see what a pop-up form is or what pop-up form they're running. So typically I would get that up on my other screen, see what they're doing just actually by going onto their website and seeing what the pop-up form is and then making a judgment there. So I'm going to go and do that. I just went and grabbed the pop-up form from their website and realized that I kept filming without unpausing this recording. So I went and filmed a whole bunch of stuff with my video on pause. So I'm going to go back and reiterate through all of this for you. So I grabbed the pop-up form from their website in the interest of keeping this private for them. And they're offering get $20 off your first order. So there's a few things that stand out to me in terms of the pop-up form that we could change to improve their opt-in rate. So we should be testing a micro commitment. So that's asking a yes or no question to the traffic before the form pops up. That's going to improve your opt-in rate most likely, not in all cases, but definitely something worth testing. We should be trying to extend the time delay. The pop-up form opened after like 2 or 3 seconds. So we want to be looking at extending that to 6 to 7 seconds to annoy less people and see how many more people opt in. Changing the CTA language on the button subscribe is really, really weak. We want to test some different things there, like give me the code or send me the code or sounds good, just something like colloquial like that. We want to alter the copy, this copy here. When you subscribe to our newsletter plus get exclusive deals and early access, that doesn't even make sense and it's not strong at all. So we want to be changing that. We want to make the headline stand out more. It's all lowercase. It doesn't really stand out. It sort of blends in with the button. It's like, it's a weak pop-up form. It's a good offer. Get $20 off your first order, but a weak pop-up form. In terms of the flows, I don't want to open all of them necessarily because I don't want to give away the brand, like I said. But we opened the welcome flow and we could see there was only 3 emails there. So we want to make that 5. What I would do, go look at the flows in the last 30 days, see what's driving the revenue. Welcome flow, most of it. Even then, they're only sending 3 emails. And the second and third email have a low open rate, 28%. So definitely room for improvement there. And they need to be communicating the value proposition more. They essentially sent the first email, which was the code, which is solid, but then the second and third email with literally just reminding them to send the code again, hence the low open rates, low engagement. We need to be communicating some value proposition, addressing some objections, warming people up before we just ask them to use the code. Their abandoned browse flow, quite weak. It was only 1 email. We want to build it out to 2 or 3 emails and test the time delay. They had a 2-hour time delay here. We should definitely be testing 1 hour as well as building out more emails. The abandoned checkout flow was interesting. It was only 1 email long and it was just a reminder. We want to build that out to be around 5 emails and offer discounts for first-time purchasers. So people who haven't purchased, who are on your email list, if they're abandoning the checkout, we want to give them some incentive to come back. They're offering $20 off your first order in the welcome flow. Why would we not offer something similar in the abandoned checkout flow or some sort of discount at least to incentivize people to keep shopping? The win-back flow was solid. Nothing to really report on here. Like I don't want to overwhelm the owner of the account when you pass over these audits. You obviously want to identify all the issues and provide as much value as possible, but you want to make it really clear what the low-hanging fruit is. And the flows were performing really strong as we identified early against the campaign. So most of the changes we want to make are in the campaigns. The last thing I do when auditing flows is point out everything that's missing because more often than not, there is a lot missing. These 2 are dead flows because they're old giveaways that aren't triggering anymore. Price drop, clearly not triggering or it's just not working. And then they only have these 4 flows as the main pillars. So we want to be building out an active on site, an abandoned cart, as they only have the abandoned checkout flow here with the checkout started trigger. The post-purchase flow, that's such an important one for upsells and removing buyer's remorse. Cross-sell flow and a back-end stock flow. So that's all I would want to touch on for the flows before moving to the campaign. So let's go take a look at what is happening in the campaigns here. So when we filter by year to date and we look at the sent emails only, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 emails here. 4 of these were sent on the same day to different segments, so that's all the same campaign. So we can call that 1 essentially, 2, 3, 4 emails this year, and they had 2 that are scheduled to go out. So there's only 6 campaigns in the entire year. Considering good volume is probably 10 to 12 a month, it's that alone, the frequency alone would be the main reasons for the campaigns driving next to no revenue compared to the flows. The open rates are also quite low. Like if you have a look here when they're sending to their whole list, they're getting 20% open rates. they're getting 40% only when sending to repeat buyers who are obviously going to be really warm. They're people who keep buying from the brand. But when they're sending to their whole list, which someone like this probably shouldn't be doing, they're getting 20% open rates. However, they can see when they're sending campaigns, they're getting $4,000, $3,000, $2,500 in sales. So it's very clear that they get good response when they send campaigns. So it's baffling to me that they're sending such a low amount. It's probably a resources issue or just a knowledge issue. I know from talking to this business owner, when we discussed his sending frequency, he alluded to the fact, if he was receiving 3 emails a week, he would get annoyed. To that, I said, well, you're only ever sending sales or discounts or offers or products. If you went straight to sending 3 emails a week, just offering different discounts or offering the same, flash sale, yes, you're going to have low engagement. Yes, you're going to annoy your subscribers. Yes, you're going to suffer from churn and unsubscribes. But if you're mixing in quality content that people want to open, maybe inspirational content, design content, blog style tips and tricks, like stuff that people enjoy opening, and you're only sending to your engaged segment most of the time, you're going to have good engagement no matter the volume, and you're going to lead to more sales because of your campaign frequency. So the campaigns are very weak in this regard. The campaigns themselves have decent click rates. I mean, these ones with the 16 and the 20% are impacted by the Klaviyo bot click issue, clearly, or the 16 and the 8%, which is happening at the moment. So we definitely want to be, excluding that. They're not getting a 16% click rate. But most of the time they're getting about 2%, which is solid, which means when they are sending campaigns, they have a good engaged list with solid response. So, essentially by upping the frequency, we're going to have a massive impact here. Now, in terms of the segments, we need to be sending to engaged 90, 120, 180-day users 3 times per week, or 2 to 3 times per week at least. Let's not overwhelm them. Remember, they've sent 4 or 5 times this entire year. We don't want to ask them to, you have to start sending 3, 4 campaigns a week. Let's just say 2 to 3, keep it on the lighter side for them, and then we can build up to the 3 a month consistently. So to do that, we want to be sending to the engaged users and need to identify these engaged segments as well as unengaged segments. Stop sending to a whole newsletter list as it's leading to 20% open rates. The segments is pretty clear. There's not a lot to say here. Like, they've sent 5 campaigns in the entire year. They're not really utilizing campaigns, let alone worrying about segments. So we want to get them building up the campaign frequency first. But to do that, they simply just want to be sending to an engaged 90, 120, 180-day user segment. Start sending to them 2 to 3 times a week. Then you can start incorporating the, random sampling of unengaged segments or worrying about, potential purchases or prospects and stuff like that. They need to stop sending to the whole newsletter, though, at the very least, because that's what's leading to 20% open rates. Now, finally, let's look at their deliverability. Head to the deliverability tab. That's extremely weak. We want to be documenting that and showcasing this to them. That is pretty awful by all standards. So definitely make that nice and clear. I like showing this screenshot to show, I'm not just waffling when it comes to deliverability. This is what Klaviyo is actually saying. Deliverability is not very strong. I like to be a realist in these audits. You can easily sugarcoat things to make people feel good or to, make people not feel bad about their efforts in their Klaviyo account. But, not everyone can expect to be perfect. If they're struggling, it's probably not their fault. They're probably distracted with a million other things. So I find it's easy to be direct and cutthroat. So deliverability is not very good here. Open rates need to be above 35 to 40%. Click rates are solid, but bounce, unsub, and spam complaints would be impacting your ability to land in the primary inbox. We want this score to be above 70 ideally. So 50 is really low, above 70 is decent, above 80 is really good. So spam complaints are on the higher side for sure. Bounce rate is on the higher side for sure. Unsubscribe rate is on the higher side. We can take a look at some of these flows. They're getting a ton of unsubscribes in the welcome flow, which is crazy. We want to be looking at that. Maybe they're getting bot signups. Spam complaint is also quite high. Otherwise, the campaigns are not that decent. When they're sending to this segment, whatever that is, it's a very high bounce rate. So we want to be looking at that. I don't want to open their profiles. Actually, I will open it while the video is paused. I just don't want to give away any of their information on their users. So they have 60,000 active profiles, which is ridiculous. You have 60,000. We're going to put this in the segment section. And how many were they sending to in these campaigns? Like, looks like they were probably sending to most people there, but a lot of these campaigns, they're not sending to nearly as many people as they should. We need to be utilizing these profiles or culling them to save money on your Klaviyo bill. So that's essentially like an audit done in a nutshell. I go through all of these. So I give some overall comments based on the home tab. I give findings on the pop-up form, the flows, the campaigns, the segments, and the deliverability. And then I will have an overall section for comments down the bottom and suggested actions. So overall, build out flows, improve pop-up opt-in rate, increase campaign frequency to 2 to 3 per week, introduce engage segments and stop sending to the newsletter, potentially clean the list to reduce unsubscribes and bounces and spam complaints. Really, cleaning your list is going to do all of that. So they need to clean their list, send more campaigns, introduce engaged segments, improve the pop-up form opt-in rate with some of the suggestions I gave above, and build out the flows. Pretty easy action plan here for this Klaviyo account. I mean, there's a lot of low-hanging fruit. Like I said, we don't want to be necessarily overwhelming them with a million things to do. We just want to be showing them the bare minimum at something like this. They're only attributing 22%. We could easily get to 30% just by sending more campaigns. Then taking it to 40% is going to be a matter of finishing building out the flows, really dialing in this pop-up form and actually implementing a good campaign strategy so we can send that frequency without annoying our subscribers. And that is exactly how I audit the email accounts, or specifically the Klaviyo accounts of clients we work with, new clients or prospects, whoever it is. Once we're inside a Klaviyo account, this is the exact audit structure that I follow. Apart from knowing how to diagnose the problems in your email account, you really need to know how to address these problems. Click the video next to me for an in-depth course on your email marketing so you never need to worry about the state of your Klaviyo or your email sales again. I'll see you in the next one.